But today we have what's going to be more of a conversation than a prepared lecture with Emily and Hunter, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. But we're really, really excited. This took a while to get together, and it's just very exciting that it's happening today. Yeah, so after self-introductions, we're going to focus the conversation on learnings and advice for professionals, a little bit about family businesses, because I just checked again this morning. It's up from what it was. 90% of businesses in the United States are family owned or family run. The number is similar in Canada, and it might be even higher around the world. So essentially all businesses are family businesses. So there's some really interesting topics there, certainly focusing on advice for students, and then pretty quickly opening it wide for students and guests to ask questions. You can unmute, or I'm happy to have you in the chat. One last thing. We just pasted a link to our weekly design newsletter, which is something we spend a lot of time on and we're very proud of. And this is a great newsletter to subscribe to. I know you probably get a lot of them. We try and provide a lot of useful resources, delightful links, and some department news as well. So let me see if I can, we've got 2 pages of people. All right. So let's turn it over to Emily and Hunter. Maybe you could give us, you could each give us a 3-minute introduction on who you are, what you've done, sort of how did you get to today, and maybe a little bit of like what you've been up to for the past 2 weeks. Emily, let's start with you.
Okay. I'm the mother, if you can't tell already. I have been a business. I actually went to design school. That's kind of important for you guys to know. So I went to design school. I was a designer for about 7 years and realized pretty quickly that I sucked at it. And what I was really good at was kind of managing people. And basically, I had gone around after I'd been a designer for a while. I asked everybody I knew, and I was very involved in the AIGA at that point. So I was really like asking everybody in the industry, kind of what should I be doing? And everybody said, you're really good at kicking people's butts. That's what you should do. So I ended up consulting. Well, first I worked as a business, like a studio manager for a small design firm that I grew from 5 people to about 35 when I left, and worked there for 7 years, and almost immediately got consulting kind of gigs on the side and grew a business. And so I've been consulting for 30 something years, helping clients evolve, mostly creative clients, almost all creative design firms, usually design forward creative firms is like how we define it. And we help them kind of evolve their business and grow it to where they want it to be, and help them think about their positioning, their vision, their new business strategies, their organizational model, their pricing, kind of all the areas of the business that help support the great work that they do. And what have I been doing for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
The
last 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I just working, I guess. Working and
No, you've been busy. You had a social life.
What have I been doing?
Things. I don't know. Didn't you make challah the other day?
Oh, yeah, I learned to make challah.
Going to plays.
Yeah, I'm just I just moved to Philly about 3-4 years ago, and I'm really just loving the city. So mostly I'm just busy making new friends, going out quite a lot. We go to theater all the time, and I live in an apartment building, and I made a really good friend across the hall. So now it's like living in a dorm. So we hang out like pretty much in the hallway and drink all the time. So it's really fun.
That sounds awesome. Hunter, welcome.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Hunter. I am my mom's business partner in the business we have. I officially joined the business about 2 years ago, but I've been dabbling in it since high school, and I kind of dabbled in it, and then I got my own experience doing some other things. And then we decided to make it official a couple of years ago. I don't even know how long ago now. I can't remember. I did not go to design school. I had one design internship in high school to give it a go. And I was like, hell no, I cannot be creative all the time. This is exhausting and not fun at all for me. I worked at a greeting card company, one of those like ones you see in like the cheap dollar stores. So it's very, very interesting type of design. But I did realize I did love working with creatives, and I love being in that environment and not being in such a corporate environment, and working with people who had creative mindsets and kind of being there to provide them sort of the tools they needed to be the most creative they could possibly be. So went to business school, worked at agencies as a project manager, account manager, business development, operations, all of the possible business forward roles at creative firms you could think about, and then officially joined my mom's business. And we came up with a name for our business, which is Casa Dafka. And yeah, we just make a really good team. We really enjoy working together. We worked together for years. My mom wrote a book. I helped her write it and do all of the Kickstarter marketing behind it. And we make a really good team because we have really different. We have just different sets of experiences. Sometimes we have different not recommendations or strategies, but different sort of like angles to look at things, right? Since I come from working within teams, I'm really able to look at the recommendations and strategies we provide from the perspective of the employees, from the designers, from the people who are actually going to be feeling the impact at a bigger level. And so we make a really good team for our clients, I think. And it's been really fun to work together, though maybe we see each other a bit too often on Zoom, which I'm sure we all feel. But yeah.
I think that's great. And certainly, I think all of our students are really, really interested in this intersection between design and business, and really pillars of our program. And it's changing. And I think we want to get to that. You know, the book is I'm one of the biggest fans of the book. I still think it's like the most beautifully designed design book. It's certainly the most beautifully designed business book.
Oh, yes. For sure.
We'll paste a link to that in the chat. And it has this irresistible, unignorable title, Brutally Honest, No Bullshit Strategies to Evolve Your Creative Business. And the tone of the book also is similarly frank. And so I thought that I would ask maybe a first question of like, what is the biggest bullshit going on in business right now? Like, what is the biggest piece of bullshit out there? Maybe both of you can take this on.
What is the biggest piece of bullshit out there?
In our industry or in the world?
I think in the world would be too broad.
I know, and I might get into political trouble.
Define it to design disciplines and design business, yes.
Yeah. I think for me, it's that we have to price low in order to win.
Tell us a little bit more.
I think that's a lot of firms feel like, because we're such a saturated industry, people feel like the only way to win now is based on price alone. And not alone, but they really do constantly sacrifice their value to win at all costs. So to me, that's kind of a little bit of bullshit. I think, saying no and being told no is actually a very cathartic and important business tool.
And the benefits of no are well documented. I think we've sent our students a couple articles on that. Hunter, what do you think? What's the biggest bullshit?
I mean, I definitely would agree with that. Like, I think just building off of that, it's like, I think the fact that the client is your top priority in a business. While your client is important, it's not the top priority. Your business is the top priority. And I think that affects your pricing, that affects your employees, that affects your structures, that affects everything. And that we're not just here to please the client. Because if we're just here to please the client, then we're here to push the client and give the client what they need, but not always what they want in a way. And we want to think about our business first and all of that. And we should stand by some of our values and everything. But I think one of the things that came to mind when you first asked the question is one of our clients the other day came to us and was just like, there's always an internal conflict our clients have around transparency with their team and how transparent they should be. And a lot of them feel like, I can't be transparent with my team because then they're going to question our pricing structure. They're going to question their salaries. But I think I think my mom would agree that that's kind of bullshit. We really do feel like, if you arm your team and empower your team with the proper information at all points, at a project level, at a firm level, if you're keeping them, updated on how you're growing your business, what your goals are, they're going to be your advocates. They're going to be there to really support you, and they're going to understand why this one project we're really going above and beyond, or why this one project we're sort of just want to get the work done, or just they'll understand the decisions you're making, and you'll have a stronger. I hate using the word culture because I think culture has sometimes a weird connotation, but you'll have a stronger culture because you're building trust, you're building a foundation that's really strong. So that's just what immediately came to mind, because we just had a conversation with our client around that.
And I'm going to add to that from the employee's perspective. It's really good for the employees, and so this is really great for the students to understand that they need to understand the cost of doing business. And I think it's the owner's responsibility to start, because you don't necessarily learn that in school, right? So I think it's our principals and the owners of firms to really educate the next generation about what we do and how much it costs to run a business. So it's kind of twofold.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like when I was a project manager, one thing I really did that really worked well for my creative team is I empowered them. I explained why we came up with these timelines, why we came up with these budgets, what the reasoning was behind it. And so when push came to shove, when we needed to work extra hard over the weekend for whatever reason, they understood, and there was trust and a backing. And I found that to be something that was really, really impactful. And yeah, something we try to work with our clients on. Sorry.
Good question, by the way, Alan.
Oh, thanks. It's interesting because there was a radical honesty movement, I guess about maybe 12 or 15 years ago, and kind of a backlash towards that. It sounds like what you're talking about is a much more reasonable honesty. I think it's really interesting in terms of
it's like
what
with context.
But both to your clients and to your I guess your team. I wanted to. We have joked in a previous chat about positioning statements, and I know that we had sent a link out to the students of an article on positioning statements. And this is something that I find just very, very amusing. And I thought that we would use the chat window and ask all of our participants here today to paste the most ludicrous positioning statement they could come up with. And I'll give you an example. We use storytelling to create memorable, user-driven experiences that increase value and promote change. And I actually have a point to this exercise, but go ahead and be creative in the chat window, everybody. Again, we can't do this in real life, so we want to take advantage of the fact that we're on Zoom. So go ahead and craft your most ludicrous. My not funny question is, the positioning statements is a big debate, both on resumes and on websites for students. And I know that we're going to get to students. So we're really jumping off here from the positioning statements that are invariably on all design, certainly all design consultancies' websites. And they probably need to be there. But this is actually a question for people looking for work. Do they put the positioning statement at the top of the resume and at the top of their websites? And I'm curious what your thoughts are. We'll just sort of take a little detour to the students and then come back to the professionals. But it's interesting to me. And I think that the students are actually getting conflicting advice. So maybe your advice could be conflicting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I bet. I think it's really hard when you're a student, unless you have years of experience and you had kind of went to, undergrad school and then went to grad school years later. There's not a lot of positioning you students have at this point, honestly. So to me, I really like at the beginning of a resume, some very simple one-sentence objective that gives you personality more than it tells them what you do. It's more like who you are as a human being, to get a sense of your flavor of who you are as just a person that they interact with. So to me, I don't think you need a positioning statement necessarily, because you're just graduating and you're just getting into the world. So I don't think you can. You want to be more broad, more than likely. You want to be more open to experiences. So I think, to me, you don't need a positioning statement, but I do think a simple one-sentence objective statement of like, not that I'm looking for a job, blah, 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 as a senior designer, blah, 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 but mere like, I am a humorous, whatever kind of person, straight. Like for me, I would say I'm a brutally honest, straightforward, thinker, whatever I would say. So I think just to give a sense of who I am, so people are not surprised when they interview me.
Yeah, I think the brutally honest actually is great. I'm sorry, go ahead, Hunter.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. I'm not going to say I feel differently. I think resumes have information, right? Like you don't want to give people, like resumes to say where you worked. And so maybe if it has one liner that expresses your personality, that's sort of like, this is what it's like to work with me versus the million other resumes you're looking at. But you don't need to say something like, I'm looking for this type of role, because they know you're looking for that type of role because you're applying for that role. You wouldn't be. So I think it's just, keeping it. I don't know if a positioning statement, just something that speaks to who you are and why it would be fun or why you would be a good fit. And that's also something that you would express in a cover letter or the email you're sending them. But no matter what, the resume is more of an information place, and positioning, I'm not sure, has a huge place when you're a student. You don't have, you're not a firm.
I'll give you an example. Like this is a crazy thing, but my son is in grad school now, and he puts on his resume that he's a dungeons master in D&D.
Mhm.
And that gets so many comments during the interview process because it already tells everybody that he's this nerdy, geeky, whatever.
Imaginative, creative.
Yeah, that's it. That's a nicer way of saying it.
Yeah, I'm strongly in favor of people
Yeah.
listing their hobbies on their resumes. And honestly, if they don't, I ask.
Yeah.
I try not to be like, so I noticed you didn't put, but curious, how you spend your time out. And one does wonder if this is actually a little bit invasive and personal and if it's appropriate. So it's really nice to proactively list it, I think, on the resume, maybe not on the website. Let's move on to something that you mentioned in the print magazine article that you sent, we sent the students a link to, which is about success metrics, right? So one of the challenges in the world is, what we choose to measure and how we measure it. Oh, actually, we have a really great positioning statement from Ben Hone here. We take an omni-channel approach to solving the world's biggest issues by meeting the right people with the right message at the right time. Ben, just tell us where to send our venture capital to invest in your so success metrics. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And again, it does follow on the last question, which is if everyone is saying kind of the same thing, how are they actually differentiating themselves? And I think this is one of the ways, right?
Yeah. I guess before we answer that question, I think we should talk a little bit about positioning because I think that frames the next answer to the success metrics. The one thing we really believe in is basically, for the most part, specializing. To be an expert in some areas. And by that, I don't mean like a deliverable necessarily, like by you're only a branding or a digital, more by the industries or industries you work with or the demographic you work with or whatever. Because if it's a very saturated industry right now. And that's why all these positioning statements are so like full of gobbledygook and bullshit because no one really wants to do that. No one wants to take a stand. They feel like they can do all things for all clients, which they can. Absolutely. Creatives can solve all problems. But where the big bucks are, where you stand out, where you can market and sell yourself so you have a focus is with your positioning. So positioning is important. And the success metrics is not client testimonials that say, oh, we love working with Emily. She's so nice and she loved our clients and loved our staff. Not like that. It's really very, very data driven and anecdotal. So not anecdotal, very quantifiable. So really asking our clients at the very beginning of a relationship, at the very beginning, at that kickoff meeting, how do you measure success? And some clients will answer that, be like, oh, this is how I'm going to measure it. And other clients don't. And if you're an expert in an industry, you can say, here's how you measure success for this kind of project. We've done it with other clients. Here's how you measure success. And then you ask them when they measure success. So then you contact them that time period. So every project's different. So like if you're doing event work and you're doing a big event branding identity, more than likely the metrics is about registration and they'll know that pretty quickly, right? Whereas a product launch might take a year because they want to see if it gets into, Target or if it gets into the bigger brands, so that measure might be different. So you just want to ask them when, and then the big part that designers need to do is follow up with the client and say, okay, you told us you're going to measure success here, this date, let's check in and see how it's going. The designers hate asking for success metrics because they're afraid of the answers.
Oh.
Right, they're afraid that
Write
A,
that
the client's
down,
not going to know that, or B, they're like, what happens if it failed?
Right.
But first of all, very rarely does it fail, honestly. But if it does, you say, okay, let's look at that and figure out how both of us what could we do next to make it more successful? Things don't always work out as well. So what can we both do? And clients love that. Then you're more advisory and you're saying, look, I take a little bit of this blame, but everybody should be looking at this and say, what can we do better? And then it gets you more work. So to me, very few design firms do this really well at all. How much did you move the needle? Percentage, dollars, increase of something.
I think this advice is gold. Hunter?
Yeah, and I think, she's basically covered everything, but I think to expand on that, it's not that crazy for success. Basically, every other industry utilizes success metrics. Like, I don't know, you're buying a lawnmower, right? They're going to show you how well it cuts that lawn and they're going to have stats behind it. I just think about that because someone just cut our lawn.
That's a funny
but,
example.
there's not like this kind of crazy thing. And we should, someone just mowed our lawn. But,
like,
it's not unusual to ask for this, and it's okay. And it helps us also price for our value, right? It helps us prove our value in the sense of like, we're worth this because we're going to be able to get you this. Marketing and advertising firms do it. So while it's a little bit trickier sometimes with like branding and things like that, there's still ways to move the needle and work with your clients. And by having an expertise, have a better sense of even what those areas are. So it is definitely something. It's tricky, but it's important and not a crazy novel idea.
Yeah, I think the frankness around challenges, successes, is just, it's healthy, and it will, I'm hoping that it will build trust. I know I'm jumping us around a little bit, but the trends in the industry that you're saying, and I think a lot of our students and community are aware of this, of course. There was Robert Fabricant's article in Fast Company, you know, the big design freak out. There have been a lot of layoffs around design teams last year. And I'm wondering what you are hearing and seeing in the industry, and maybe the kinds of advice that you're giving for people in, I guess we would say, tumultuous times.
And I'll let you take this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, you know, I'm saying in 2023, like, you know, for some of our clients was a tougher year, especially our clients who were more generalists and who hadn't built a level of specialization. But we have seen a lot of our clients now in 2024 really seeing an uptick in business again. So, and hiring, and they're hiring for this business they're building. So we're definitely seeing a uptick. I know the world is kind of crazy right now, but I also think a little bit is like, if we go in with that mindset, then that's the mindset we're going to encounter the market at. But if we go in the mindset of, you know, things are looking up, then there are opportunities and there is business out there. And that's what we're seeing with the majority of our clients, I would say. And the people who have really focused on there. It's similar, like when you're a student, it's like when you're actively building connections and you're actively applying and you're actively you're actively relationship building, and you're doing kind of like, you're putting all of the vibes out there in all different ways, you're more likely to get a return than if you're just kind of sitting around waiting for you. So our clients who have been active in terms of keeping up their networks, establishing relationships, keeping up business development efforts, staying in touch with old and new clients, and the ones that have seen the most success.
Yeah, don't be looking for new work when you need new
that.
work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Emily, anything to add to that?
No, she covered it. I mean, to me, that's really the big thing is our clients that succeeded are the ones who always forever have focused on their business, not only business development, but relationships. Just focus on their business, looking at the bottom line, and realize that referrals is not as consistent. And the thing with most design firms is I have a tendency to generalize, so forgive me if I say the word most a lot. I do that quite a lot. Most design most design firms rely on referrals for business, and that allows your contacts, which are very limiting at some point, to drive the direction of your business. So we're a big believer in outreach, just so you can control the business and go after the clients you want. They might never have heard of you because they're not in the same network, right? So to us, it's really important that, and that's what we've seen, is the clients that have continually reached out consistently and introduced themselves to new people did better during this trying time.
Yeah, this is great. Could you put a little bit more meat on the bones? So maybe some specific best practices. We talk a lot in this department around circling back emails. Maybe some other things that you found effective, or that you wish the world worked a little bit differently than in that way.
Yeah. So the first thing you should get rid of is the idea that you're trying to convince people to work with you and you're trying to sell them. That's the mindset that makes us stop. We think of, used car salesmen, right? That's not what we're doing. We're just introducing ourselves. We're not trying to win anything. If you go into it trying to win, if you go into any relationship, whether it's in person or by an email introduction or at a conference, and if you go into thinking, I want this business, I want them to work with me, it's not going to happen. And their messaging is going to be much more aggressive and off-putting. So we just believe, just talk to them like you're a friend, not close personal friend, but a friend, and really introduce
friend
yourself.
Of a friend.
Yeah, just more ask them questions about them. Like I'm always in business development mode because
relationship building mode.
Relationship building. I like we call it relationship building or building the love, right? I just love introducing myself to people. So for instance, I'm on a Slack channel that's all design principles. And there's, I don't know, 200, 300 people on the Slack channel. And every once a week, I introduce myself to somebody new on the channel just to say, hey, I wanted to reach you. I'm on the channel. I think it's fantastic. I see you post a lot. I just want to introduce myself. If you'd like, I would love to have a call just to hear more about your firm. That's it, right? It's not like I want to work with you. I saw you launch this brand. I think it looks shitty and you need a new brand. Like, it's nothing like that. It's really just, hey, I want to introduce myself. Yeah. And then you stay in touch with these people. So I think that's the other thing Hunter and I like talking about, is that you have to really stay in touch with these people. Mm-hmm. Don't just talk to them, because the general rule of thumb is once you meet somebody, it's usually 2 years, almost to the date from when they turn into a client. Mm-hmm. 2 years. So you have 2 years to build the love and build the relationship. And I'm going to tell you, that works almost every time. My clients call me and they're like, I couldn't believe you said this, because 2 years, like I met this person 2 years ago and they literally called me on that day. This just happened to me like a week ago. Somebody contacted me. I looked at the email and I had reached out 2 years ago. And now they're going to turn it to a client. So Hunter, do you want to add to that?
And I think the same role applies for students, right? Like, yes, it's great if someone has a job opening that fits your requirements and what you're looking for. But if you're making connections with firms that you admire, that you're interested in at any stage of their business, when they're not hiring, just be like, hey, I'd love to have a coffee with you. I love what you do. And I'm, student, whatever. Like, that's a great way to build relationships. And then down the line, when they have a job opening and let's say it's perfect and you apply, then they remember, like, oh, this person coffee with me when we were not even hiring. So it's just, it's like sort of building friends, building a network. Oh, did I? Am I
yeah, you're just
building
a
network
out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. It's just about building relationships you do need without in any part of your life.
The one thing I will say for students especially is never kiss their ass. So when you're complimenting them, don't be fake and don't go on and on for paragraphs. Like, one sentence will do. I've admired your work for years. I love the launch of this new campaign. That's it. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be like an essay.
It's so transparent. It's just a waste of time.
Yeah, make it very authentic.
It feels
right?
icky. Yeah.
Like, really make it authentic. Don't just reach out. Like, really, like, be like someone that you actually do admire, that you did find something super interesting about this one project. They didn't mention that very specific thing. So it's like, I think there's the only way you're going to be cringy or icky or like I don't know what the word, but is if you're not being authentic. Just be authentic and most likely it's going to land pretty well.
Let's take a little stop through family business before we get to specific advice for students. And there's actually been lots and lots of specific advice for students already. So thank you so much for that. I did mention that most businesses in this country and maybe in the world, probably in the world, are family-run businesses. So you're turning your business, Emily, into a family-run business with you, Hunter. And I think we'd like to learn just a little bit more about that. And you said that you would be comfortable sharing what's maybe not working, or some of the things that you're maybe not fighting about, but that are a struggle, because I think that this actually could be really, really instructive, particularly when we think about design as a system and organizations as systems and family businesses absolutely as systems, both in a personal family culture and in business imperatives.
Yeah, I mean,
okay. You want to start?
Well, first, I think it would be interesting to point out that actually a lot of our clients, not for any reason we've purposely tried, are in some sort of personal relationship with their business partner, whether that's marriage, not so much father, or not so much parent kid, what's the word? Relationships with a lot of a lot of really best friends. So it's really interesting being in a family business and being able to bring that to our clients and bring that perspective has been something really interesting. I think the thing about a family business, and you could build off this, is there's so many amazing things, but it's not easy. I mean, any partnership is not easy, right? And then there's the whole other angle of this is also my mom and she's my mom. So you have to work at it. But I think that's actually a great practice for any partnership, whether it's with your best friend, with someone who's related to you, with someone who's completely random, like you're in a group project or whatever it may be. One thing that we had decided to do when we decided to officially join forces was essentially couples therapy, but for us, and that's been something that's been super helpful to have a reflect on what's going well, what's not working, and kind of work through those things together.
Yeah. I think for us, it's been really, for me, I've seen it, there's good, bad things, right? Not bad things, but there's really amazing things and there's some challenges. And the amazing things for me is confident for me. I love having a partner. I love having her different perspectives. She's, obviously we have different generational perspectives, different experiences. So that dynamic has been amazing for me and I love it so much. We also have different, I'm a big picture thinker and Hunter is also a big picture, but she's more tactical and like get things done and make lists and operationally focused. So the combination worked really well. I think the therapy has helped. We see each other a lot more. And so the relationship, we have to really spend time focusing on mother-daughter stuff because we're always talking about business. And Hunter, when we first started doing this, put up boundaries about like, let's just talk business during business calls and personal, and we schedule time for personal. And while I hated that because I like to talk about personal and business at the same time, it's really created good structure for us. But we sometimes still have to remember, okay, we need a personal call.
Yeah.
Right.
I think also because I'm living
our lives.
Yeah, because I'm also not living. When we are physically present, it's a lot easier. Okay, we're walking the dog. Okay, we're walking the dog, and therefore this is a non. And we'll literally say, is this work or a non-work walking the dog? Usually it's a non-work, and we agree to that. Or like, okay, it's a work walking the call. Here's what's on the agenda, like a work meeting. But yeah, I think it's definitely making the space for both. And I don't know, it really, as we're saying this, I think it applies to any partnership that you have with someone. You want to maintain that personal relationship, and you have to make sure you're making the space for that and setting those, I think, boundaries and kind of setting those limits to allow yourself the space to be both people, to be the professional person, your personal self, while still being able to be both in one moment. But I think it's been something that's been really helpful for us with our partnership.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's been a struggle for me because I'm not good with boundaries at all. And so Hunter had to create some boundaries that for a while I would push back on because I've been working by myself for 30 years. So now to have a partner has also been an interesting challenge for me to realize that I have somebody else that works differently than me and I have to respect how they work. So I think like Hunter said, we've learned a lot about how this applies to our clients and that there are different work styles, different behavioral styles, and you have to be able to come to some kind of compromise of what's the best way to work together. So we're constantly communicating. So I would say the one thing I would definitely recommend with any relationship is ongoing, consistent, honest communication.
Thank you so much for sharing those. I love the idea of structuring and the boundary. I know my wife and I had a rule with our daughter about no talking about, college after 8 p.m. And when we would tell any of our friends, they're like, that is brilliant, we're doing that.
Yeah.
And I remember also my sister, she had a personal trainer for a little while and she had a rule like no chit chat about life while training, like only talking about training while training.
Yeah.
I think that those are great.
Yeah. It's also interesting. It reminds me of one thing. It's not really, I don't know, I'm just making this connection, but one thing we tell our clients is when your team is burned out, a lot of times, yes, there's teams that are burned out because they're working like 80-hour weeks.
Oh, yeah.
But there's teams that are burned out when they're 40, 35-hour weeks. And a lot of times what we've seen, and actually it's proven, is because people are pulled in a lot of directions at all the time. They don't have time to focus on one thing. So it feels sort of similar. Our relationship will burn out if we're constantly switching between personal, professional, this, that, as opposed to like making sure we have dedicated time for each. And so I think even as students and what we recommend to our clients, it's like when you're organizing your time, try to, it's not always possible, but as much as you can contain it and put boundaries and put spaces for certain things, it actually is a really helpful tool to contain your energy, to maintain relationships, to prevent burnout.
That's great.
Sorry, just like weird connection, but
no, I think it's great. Before we move it to opening for questions, let's just a couple pointed questions for students. Also, I will say the chat window is like not so great, everybody. So load it up. Nigel has a question that we'll come back to. Please type in your thoughts, your reactions, your questions. Again, in a live event, you don't have a chat window unless you pass notes. So let's really try and take advantage of this. You can put anything in there that you like. Again, a reaction. It doesn't have to be a question. Please get in there if you can, would be great. Let's start sort of with I know that you've written about this and talked about it. Students actually leaving school, we did talk about getting jobs coming back. That's nice to hear. And some of the ways to maintain relationships before you actually need a job, right? But for students who are interested in entrepreneurship and launching their own product or business or platform, a couple of things you've talked about is sort of what's what are the core competencies, but you also talk about like the qualities that they need to have in order to be successful in their efforts. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is one of our favorite topics. We have this dream. Can I tell about our dream? I have this dream of developing.
Okay, this is like,
yeah. Go ahead. You don't want me to tell?
Go tell the dream.
We have this info. It's like I want to do an infographic of when to start your business.
Should you start design firm?
Should you start business? And then like, if you're a risk taker, if you're not a risk taker, then it goes right to, if you're not a risk taker, it goes right to no, like, so I think there are this is something that we really find. Look, we've seen the most amazing people start businesses and surprising us, right? So I don't want to make too many generalizations, but I do think risk taking is a big one to me, like being comfortable with risk and comfortable with no's and not a people pleaser is really kind of, to me, those are essential ones. Not to be an evil person, but somebody that doesn't necessarily have to respond to every situation as like, I want them to like me, right? And I think they need to understand that running your own business is not about doing great creative. It isn't. I'm sorry, but it isn't. It's about running a business. And so unless they're willing to run a business and deal with like the bookkeeper and the accountant and the taxes and the legal stuff and client bullshit and staff bullshit and, producers and developers, then don't run your own business, because that's a lot of what we do. We are constantly struggled with so many principals who started their business because they're great creatives, but they just don't want to run a business and they don't know how to, they don't have, some of them don't even have innate skills. And so to me, just to know that running a business is really fun. I'm not going to say I love running a business. I love being an entrepreneur, but it's running a business. It's not being cool and creative. That's a side bonus of it. And that is mostly for your staff and for other people. So if you're doing it just to do great creative, get a great job.
Yeah. I mean, again, we've seen people surprise us. We've seen people surprise us. Nothing's impossible. We do find that sometimes that's why we actually think partnerships work really well, or at least like even our clients who are one partner, we kind of started this recently. We've really noticed that building them a leadership team of people to support them, like 1 or 2 people on their staff who have more insight into the business, have more say, etc., has been really helpful, because it is, running a business is hard. And so even just one person, even if you're, let's say, for example, you start a business and you're not really there for, you're really there for the business element of it. And that's great, but you do need someone who's creative, who's that big picture thinker, who's imaginative, who's going to push you to take risks that maybe you wouldn't take normally because you're more business and financially oriented or whatever it might be. So partnerships or having people on your team that support you in a way to find that balance, but there needs to be a balance. Like, yes, maybe you could be incredibly creative 50% of the time, but the other 50% of the time, you're going to have to know that, you're going to have to wake up and respond to the account, to do your taxes and manage a team challenge that's happening, and build relationships. And it's an incredible thing. But I think a lot of people jump to being like, I do amazing creative, I have these great connections, I'm going to build a business. And then maybe a couple of years later, they're like, oh man, what did I get myself into? I'd be much happier as a creative director at a great agency or firm or in-house that I really support and can really get behind.
Yeah,
I will say the generations are changing a little bit. I'm sorry, Ellen. When I first started my creative business and when my clients in their people still made, I don't want to say all generations, but the older generation, the mid-generation, they really started the business to be doing cool, great work, right? Now I see your generation really being entrepreneurs. So it's getting better. I think we're raising the next generation to be more entrepreneurial, and I think that's fantastic. So I don't think it's as much of a problem with the younger, like our younger clients, as much as it is with my older clients who just want to do great work and also had personalities that necessarily weren't great to work in-house. So
I mean, the reality is though that the industry is saturated, if not overly saturated. There are a million firms out there. So if you're starting a firm, you really want to make sure it's the right reason and for a reason that, and like really think about what your personal priorities are. Like, do you want to have a stable salary and a job where you could leave at the office? Then great, owning your own business probably is not the move, and that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean you're not going to still be a kick-ass creative person who gets to use their imagination and build amazing things, right? There's just, I think, really thinking about what your goals are of starting a business, because it's tough out there as well. And like, if you have something that you're really, interested going after in terms of specialization, awesome. But really thinking about what's driving you. And you could still be entrepreneurial without starting your own business. There's so many ways to be entrepreneurial. There's ways you could be personally entrepreneurial. There's ways you could be entrepreneurial within a firm that you really vibe with, that you really want to grow with, and you want to help lead and support the existing partner. So there's just, because I think also like there's a connotation of entrepreneurship, but I don't think that's also necessarily true. There's so many ways to lead and, I don't know, do your own thing.
So
in your own
this
way.
is great. I'm looking at the clock. I think absolutely it's time to turn it over to the participants here. Again, you can type in your questions. I'll read out a couple that we have so far. You could also just use the hand raise, or you could literally raise your hand, or you could unmute and jump right in. Emily and Hunter, thank you so much for just really candid advice and reflections. 2 questions in the chat so far. Nigel says, personally, it can feel energy consuming to reach out to new people. How do you make it a sustainable practice to build those relationships without feeling drained? And then Oscar says, I saw Emily knows Alex Center. Can you discuss a client that you had where you helped a single individual like Alex build a firm from scratch, one person? Maybe we can start with Nigel's question about keeping the energy for, a sustainable practice and building relationships.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is actually an incredible question. It's something we get from our clients a lot. We have our recommendations and general best practice that work, but we always like to say to our clients, and we like to work with our clients to find the ways that work for you, right? For some people, sending an email's initial connection point is the best and easiest way to do it. And then some people, it's like they actually prefer going to networking events, going to community events, and that's a way for them, and that feels less draining. So it's kind of finding the way, like think about how you like to make friends, and how that is the least energy draining for you and how it works for you, and kind of apply that to the relationships you want to build on the business side. Like there's no right or wrong way to do things as long as you're building relationships. Maybe you're very much a one-on-one person. Those ideas of going to like an event about, let's say, I don't know, like whatever, sustainability or something, it makes you want to die. But the idea of meeting someone at that event for coffee sounds great. Then do that. Reach out to someone and grab a coffee with them. That's awesome. Everyone does things differently, and that's okay. I remember when I was in business school, I had this major panic attack because I was told that like, this is how you network. And I was like, but I hate that. And that sounds terrible. And I have to wear a suit and understand. And I had a full on breakdown. And I was just like, and then I realized I'm good at networking. I'm good at building relationships. I just own way. And I do it differently than my mom does it. She's very good at going to conferences and tapping someone on the shoulder and being like, hey, I like your earrings. Let's talk. That sounds awful for me. But let's say I meet someone, I think they're really cool, and I ask them to grab a coffee and we have coffee. That sounds awesome. And that's really easy for me to do that. So find a way that works for you, and don't like, this is the one way you have to do it, and don't pressure yourself into that. Find a way that feels good for you, because everyone's different.
Yeah. And don't put too much pressure on yourself in terms of how many people you reach out to. One person a week is good. Start there. I want to reach out to one person, reconnect with somebody once a week. I do that. Like once a week, I just think, who haven't I spoken to in a while? Who do I want to introduce myself? And I always just set that goal, one person, not overwhelming, right? And do it, as like Hunter said, authentic to you. We recently,
authentic.
My favorite new business story, because this is me. I was in a subway, the New York City subway, and this guy had like a fish tackle box that was clear, and it had all these like colored markers and colored Post-it notes. It was really cool. And I just went up to him and talked to him on the subway. Turns out he was a UX UI designer. And we got off the next stop, had coffee. He turned it into a client within a year. Just because I just saw, hey, I think, what's going on with your tackle box? It's so cool. What do you do? And what he told me, and I'll never forget this, is I do this in person. I do this clear tackle box so people like you would come talk to me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, so maybe when you go to a conference, if you're not comfortable approaching people, maybe wear some really awesome outfits so people approach you instead. Like lure people to you instead of you having to go to other people, right? Think about, ways you can, And that's why also, like, for our clients, like, we recommend like speaking at a conference versus just attending, because when you speak, people are going to come up to you instead of you having to come up to them. So even as a student, maybe there's ways to do that, like in terms of like being the person who's, I don't know, presenting people on stage, and then people are like, oh, you're that person who presented someone on stage. I don't know. But there's ways to think about it where I think we just get so drawn into like what the traditional sales, relationship building, but it's really not like that. People, and also people, we're human, we're innately want to build relationships, but everyone has their limit, and be okay with that. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to be like, I must do it this one way.
I like the idea of tackle box as a kind of shorthand for, the thing about you that's irresistible to ask about. Like, you were very interesting. Your portfolio is very interesting, but where's the tackle box? Like, what's the tackle box? Like,
for me, it's like my
what's
earrings.
unique to you?
I wear big, bold earrings because people always come up and talk to me. Always.
Well, now everyone really does need to turn their video on.
Well, these are not the most fun ones I have, but yeah. Actually, you know what you could do? Hold on.
Oh my God.
You gotta do show and tell. Absolutely.
Those are my earrings.
Okay.
There you go. I had to do some show and tell there.
Oscar had asked about I guess a case study where you helped a single individual build a firm from scratch. That's a very big question for a quick answer, but maybe you can address that a little bit, and then we can enter some.
It's really hard to run your business by yourself without any staff. So be willing to grow and to outsource all the creative so that you're focused on your business. The way we help one person is we don't, unless they're willing to hire. Unless they're willing to, like, we literally turn down solopreneurs as clients if they're not willing to really spend time on their business and not with their clients and doing the work, right? Really reaching out and doing business and thinking about their business, and that they have resources or are willing to hire the creative to support them. So to me, that's the thing we usually do. And then once they're ready, we have worked with solopreneurs who are ready to hire. So the first thing we do is work with them on their positioning and their vision, like where do they want to go and how do they get there? And we really spend a lot of time on their vision and what makes them different. And then what kind of team you need to support them. And pricing also. We do a lot of work on pricing because especially when you're a one-person firm, you have nobody to bounce off ideas. And so a lot of times we undervalue ourselves when we're working by ourselves. So it's nice to have somebody else to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, I think quickly to add to that, it's, if you're one person starting a business, that's great. That's how businesses start. Usually you're one or two people. But you might have to be, and I hate advocating for this because I work 4-day weeks. But you're gonna have to know that you're gonna have to work hard. And because starting a business is no joke, and it's like you're a startup and you're in startup mode and you're gonna have to build your business. A lot of times it's kind of good to you have to start building that network, right? And that's why you're building a network for any future endeavors you have. So because you want to come in with some client base and with the ability to hire or at least bring in creative support as quickly as possible. So it's just, running a business is a risk. It's an incredible risk. It's an incredible thing, but it's not easy, right? And those first couple of years are going to be tough. They're going to be full of ups and downs. They're going to be full of a lot of uncertainty. And, I'm sure there's plenty of percentages about how many new businesses fail. And that's not, it's just the reality of the situation. So you just need to be willing to commit and know what that takes and do what it takes, sort of.
But it's also really fun. Like once you're into it, it's so I loved building. That was my favorite part of the business, was building the business. And also having somebody to support me. So I think that's really important, is that you're surrounded by people that encourage you and support you. So surrounding yourself with positive, like my husband was at that time, he was my fiance, was my biggest supporter in starting a business. He was the one who convinced me every step of the way. He convinced me to quit my job to run my consulting practice by buying me a fax machine. He literally bought me a fax machine for a very romantic gift. That was when we used fax machines. When I wrote my book, he's like, you need to write a book. You need to run an event. It was so great to have that cheerleader behind me because he gave me the confidence to move forward. Even though I have a lot of confidence, I needed that support.
Yeah. I think that's what I mean. At a certain point, you also just have to do it, right? While you should build your relationships now if you ever want to own something in the future. And at some point, you just have to okay, I'm doing this and I'm committing to this. I'm quitting my full-time job. I'm quitting the security of that. I have some savings in my account, and I'm gonna take this risk and really go for it and think of and come with it with a business line. Like, this are the types of clients I want to go after. These are the relationships I've built. These are here's who my first hire might be, et cetera.
I do want to double underline. It is like your superpower, in terms of the value that you bring to the world. But again, I want to double underline that almost everything that you're talking about is human resource, human capital, people, relationships. Like very little of it is about design and innovation in a way. Like that's table stakes. We assume that it's the other part that's going to hurt you or help you succeed. I remember talking to a restaurant owner and I said, so I heard somewhere that owning a restaurant is 70% cleaning and 30% cooking. And they said, no, it's more like 80% cleaning and 20% cooking. So this idea of having a partner and a business partner and someone who actually loves running the business so that you can pay attention to the parts that you want to pay attention to, I think is just the best advice ever. Erica asked in the chat, would you be able to walk us through how to start consulting, how you start consulting a client? Does it start with a call where they sort of vent with their challenges? I love that.
No?
Well, no, the discovery, yes, but not before when they start like we get these emails from people like who want to work with us and they vent about all their problems right in that first email. And I'm first like, can you afford us? And are you qualified? I recommend that you do this with your clients too. Like before you have like them telling you all their problems and you trying to solve them, first you have to hear them and make sure that they're qualified. So I think that's the first thing. But Hunter, do you want to walk through this? Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we first do that, right? They reach out to us and we see if they're a good fit, and then we hop on a call and we sort of we like to control it, right? So it's not an event, but we like to hear, what we tell them who we are, and then we get to hear where their challenges are. And we talk a lot about like where do you want to go and where are you now, so we could kind of start, because that's what it's about for us, right? That evolution and growth. Like we're here also to solve your like day-to-day problems, but we really think a lot of those day-to-day problems end up being the result of something bigger going on. So sometimes we sort of probe and pry to like, okay, like you're slow on new business, okay, why is that, or whatever it might be. So I think the consultation, when we first talk to someone, it's like getting a sense of like what they're looking like, what their challenges are, but controlling the conversation. So it's not just venting, and really kind of being okay, like how can we support you in that?
What's the time when you've been most surprised in one of these phone calls? I'm curious, where you didn't see it coming, maybe.
Oh my God. Pretty much
there was one call we had the other day. Yeah, there's one call the other day. It was really funny. They were talking like, we're growing, we're doing really great. We love our clients. We love our team. We just did all these changes, but we're not making any money.
We made 2 people partners. Like, it was a big thing. Like we made 2 people partners.
Yeah.
And then they end with, but we're not profitable.
It's like, well, you're running a business. Yeah.
That was really, and it was funny because that was just an introductory call. That was not a new business call. I just was one of those calls where I said, I'd love to meet you. We're in Philly, let's meet. And it turned into new business because they wanted an event, which was great. And we probably will work them because they're not profitable.
I really appreciate
the
answer. Again, welcoming people to unmute and ask a question. It's nice in these Zoom meetings to hear other voices. So I would just jump in. We've got a little bit more time.
Can I just answer one more thing about that? The kind of process of working with new clients is we qualify them first. We hop on an introductory call. To understand what their needs are, we write them a proposal, we send them a contract, we get paid, and then we work with them through the whole discovery process. And that's when we get really deep. So the discovery process, just like you guys do, is the most important. So really understanding all the context of everything that's going on.
And I think one thing that's interesting that we're working a lot with our clients on too is the discovery process that our clients have that we have is very similar, right? It's a way to make sure you actually understand what the client's challenge and need is, and that because sometimes we uncover things in the discovery process that they didn't tell us or that they didn't even know about until they told us. And that's really helpful because then we're very much the type of consultants who we could say, okay, like this is what we're hearing now. So let's discuss if what we've recommended is actually the best course of action. And so with some of our clients, specifically the ones that are more specialized and experts, they actually have a lot of them have the freedom to be like, okay, we're going to start with the discovery phase and make sure you're telling us you need this. But let's actually make sure that's what you need. Let's do this discovery phase. Let's make sure we're all on the same page before we kind of jump in. We're not just going to do what you tell us, right? We're going to really make sure we know what you need, and we're going to be a little bit more advisory on that. I think that's something that a lot of our clients have really kind of pushed towards, is like that strategy element of like, okay, let's really look at things up front and let's really dive deep to make sure we're not just producing creative work based on what you're telling us, but we're based and creative work on what your kind of like challenges, pain points, opportunities are.
Are companies often accurate in terms of, or close to accurate in their self-awareness or what their true challenges are? And I'm wondering how you let them know.
Yes and no. They usually they do identify the big problems, but what they're not identifying is the underlying issues that they don't necessarily see. Right.
Yeah.
So we have a client
like things that are
now
related. Yeah.
Like I have a very long-term client I've worked forever, and she just came back after 2 years, and she came with us to do organizational structure. She has big issues with her team and like, does she have the right people? She's growing really fast. But one of the things we realized after discovery is that she's kind of checked out of the business. And she didn't tell us this. You know, she sort of is like, I'm just doing new business and that's all I want to do. And I let the team work independently of me. And so we actually have to pull her back, which is very unusual. We usually have to pull our clients towards business development. And with her, we have to pull her a little bit away from it to focus a little bit on the team. And we just were like, where did that come from? I have no idea. And I've worked with her for years. I didn't know this until we started doing a more deeper discovery.
Oh, that sounds so great. I'm going to jump over a couple of questions in the chat. Jennifer asked, what besides networking do you recommend for those very early in their careers to find a job? Are there specific recruiting agencies we should reach out to, certain job search websites other than LinkedIn? And this is really a fascinating question just for all of us in the industry of design and employment is, where do you find creative talent? You did talk about the value of networking, but maybe you can add to that with some advice for students or people early in their careers who are, just emerging or trying to, make a move even. Maybe that's a second question. Let's just talk about people at the early stage career.
And do you want me to take this? You want to take it?
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You take it and then I'll see if I could add to it.
The first thing is don't use the word networking. It's such an icky word. It makes you just like, so don't think about networking. Think about you're just introducing yourself to people. You're making
relationship building.
It's relationship building. So that's the first thing is changing your vocabulary about what things are. Do not go to recruiters. Unless you're looking for and you are qualified to get a $200,000 position or above, recruiters will not get you the best jobs. They will not spend time with you. They're only really after the big buck, like the big salary position. So really recruiters do not help. There are staffing agencies like Aquint and like all kinds of, not Aquint, Aquint, that will place you temporarily, but they make a 25% or sometimes 50% markup on your fee. So the best thing is just introducing yourself to firms you want to work with and start freelancing. Yeah. And really that's the best way. And LinkedIn is the only way to get a job. Honestly, I hate to say there's no other, there's some DEI sites that are available for people who are diverse that most people are checking out nowadays. But for the most part, I would say it's really still LinkedIn. Hunter, you have probably a different perspective.
Yeah, like where the job postings are going, right? We recommend all our clients put on LinkedIn. No one's like on, I don't know, Indeed or Monsters. I don't even know if that still exists. But no. But I mean, it's like, I also think combing through LinkedIn is like a nightmare, right? Like I've been in that job hunt where you're just like combing through. So really, as much as possible, it is about building those relationships and going to firm sites and seeing who's hiring. And sometimes also one thing that's kind of like a little trick is if you see someone's hiring on LinkedIn, great, go to their website and see if they also have the job posting and application information there and submit it through their website instead, or submit it through their jobs at or something like that. Because it kind of gets you out of that LinkedIn bubble and it shows that you went to their website, that you did a little bit more research. Because LinkedIn, a lot of times we tell our clients, okay, you put it on LinkedIn just to have it on LinkedIn, but really we want you to also, we tell our clients to come through the networks first. That's the first place to find talent is your existing network. Put it on LinkedIn, but we want you to be reaching out to colleagues and peers and past people you've worked with. And that's the best way for you to find employees. So kind of the same goes for students, right? It's like combing through your network and trying to make those more personal connections.
I've talked to a handful
one thing is you don't want to, I'm sorry, Alan,
I talked to a handful of companies who didn't know that they had a job board on their own website. And that's actually a very funny story to start with. Emily?
One thing I was going to say is you don't have to reach out to people who actually have job openings. You should just introduce yourself to firms that you like, because then if they like your they will spend some time looking at your portfolio. It might be 6 months from now or 3 months. They might not be immediately available, but they usually, most creatives love to see young talent. And so if they'll make time for you, they will then recommend you to people that they know are hiring. Like the Design Partners Slack channel I'm on, people always like, I just interviewed this great candidate, couldn't hire them, don't have that position available, but anybody else want to look at this person? Like, there's a lot of those conversations. So people will recommend you to people that are hiring, because we all talk to each other. Like somebody mentioned Alex Center. Like, I literally know everybody in the industry practically. I'm probably attest to that. I know everybody. So I can connect with all kinds of people. My clients do the same. They all talk to each other.
And so everyone should put their resume in a Dropbox for you too after this
Yeah.
this event. Hunter?
Oh, no, I have nothing else to add.
All right, other questions in the chat, or just unmute and go for it? You can do it.
Oh, somebody asked about qualifying. Should I answer
Yeah,
that
I think it's a good question.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has different sets of qualification criteria, right? But there's things you can define that we have for our clients, right? In terms of like, well, first of all, I think there's something that we really believe in, that there's sort of like a vibe check, right? It's like you really want to make sure that you click well with that client. Like, we've definitely got off calls with potential new clients. Like, we really just did not. There's just some red flags there that are like red flags that are important to us. Everyone also has different red flags that are important to them. And so being aware of those, like, what are your red flags in a client? Like, if they're not responding to your emails within, 48 hours, or if they're whatever they're doing, if they don't show up to your calls, like, trust that gut instinct a little bit. So that's always something we recommend. And then we usually do it a little bit by like willing. So if one of us is like willing to change, because in order to work with us, you need to be willing to change. Otherwise, nothing that we are going to recommend is going to have any impact. So we like to move with clients when they're ready. And that's why we don't end up working with a lot of one-person firms, because they're not ready to change, because they're just starting off. So usually when people are at that like 3 to 5 year mark and they're ready for the next big shift. So that's another big one for us. Size of team, things like that. But for you, I think everyone should be qualifying. We recommend our clients qualify. You guys should be qualifying in terms of the jobs and the employers you're working for. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think we develop a whole matrix. So a lot of creatives just look at, are they going to pay me well, and is it cool work? Those are just the minimal bare necessities of looking at it. Like, who am I working with? Like, who are the stakeholders? Are there a lot of stakeholders, less stakeholders? And what is the things that drive me crazy, and what are those red flags? Reading, like what Hunter said, was really important. Our clients have a tendency to just they're like, they want to work with me, I love them, and they fall in love with every client they've ever met, and are not seeing these huge red flags staring at them in the face, because they're just so excited. Nike called me, and then they're like, Nike called me, and I'm like, yeah, but there's 3
they're paying you $5,000. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's 5 more interviews to come that you don't know are around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. So
Hunter, you had talked about that 3 to 5 year sort of growth moment, and there are biorhythms to the growth of not only a company, but also to an individual themselves. And this actually came up this morning in a meeting with Ben. The further you get in your design career, the more you're being pushed towards management and project management, and getting just away from the actual craft of the design itself. And I was wondering if you've seen some hopeful and useful examples of people who have maintained their proximity to the chrome, to the actual craft, while being able to participate in a growing business or a growing design practice.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on how to answer that? Not sure.
Can you say the question again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
Not sure yet.
As a designer gets older, and they get more experience, and they've worked with more clients, and if they have capacity if they have people skills, they're going to get pushed towards management positions, product management, project management. And I've talked to a lot of people who aren't so happy. They're like, I don't, in quotes, I don't do design anymore.
Yeah.
And they may make more money, but they're not, the day-to-day is not what they're looking for. And I wonder if there are some inspiring stories and models that you could share for people who are tuning in today that are sort of further along in their professional careers. Thanks.
I think the one thing a lot of them do is start being on design. They lead to design entrepreneurship, similar to what you're teaching, right? Which is they're developing something on the side that they are proud of. And as long as they have the time to still devote to both businesses, we support that. If they don't spend enough time on their own business, then that's a problem. So the first thing I would say is design entrepreneurship for those people is a great option if they're still spending time on their business. But the second thing I would say is I literally love metrics so much. And one thing is I just say one project a quarter. You're allowed to design one project a quarter. Pick the project you want and you can get to do it any way you want. So we always tell our clients, like, we're not pulling you out completely. Just pick that one project that gets you excited and you can do it. But only one.
So again, like time boxing, what you had talked about before, structuring how you spend your time and how you spend your attention, and not after 8 p.m. with your daughter. Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, I think also like there's, like maybe you gave it a good go 3 to 5 years and it's not what you want, and that's okay. Like, I don't mean to be like, but we have clients who have made some major shifts, who have left the industry to do something completely different, to go in-house, and they're happier. Like, I think there's just a level, especially as a student. I remember like when I got out of school and like there's all this pressure to like do the right career path and do this one thing. And if you pivot, you've failed. But like, there's no failure in that. You're just trusting what your priorities are. And maybe you thought your priorities were opening your own business. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, you start a family and you realize your priorities are now stability. So you want to get an in-house job or work at an agency and be a creative director and hopefully your energy's there. And there's no harm in that, right? Like really like thinking about what you're just trusting that. And there's still ways, obviously, like as my mom said, she gave some recommendations, but I think also allowing yourself the space to rethink things when the time is there to rethink them.
We have
in whatever capacity.
We had clients that a partnership, really great partnership, really good friends, really good power team together. They grew a great firm. They were building like unbelievable clients, like doing really well. But one of the partners was just unhappy because she was raising kids and she thought the world was pretty fucked up, and she was sick of not being part of changing the world for her kids.
The purposefulness.
So she decided, she decided that she had to leave design altogether and leave her best friend and leave this practice she built, even though she was so proud of it, because she felt like she needed to help shape the world for her kids. And so that was brave and powerful. And, we worked with them on the transition, and the other partner was so supportive, like incredibly supportive. And it was okay. It went in a better place, and she needed to follow that passion, and we supported her.
Let me pick up on that, because we do actually talk to students and faculty about being mission driven. So this idea of finding something purposeful and almost like taking the leap of faith to jump into it and believe that you're going to be happier because it speaks to your mission, or maybe even your newly discovered mission.
Yeah. Well, we always say this, when we tell our clients that we want them to be experts, not to be experts in nonprofit and social good and mission driven, because all designers have a good heart, and that's all they want to work on. And it's really hard to be differentiated in that field, unless you're specifically focused on like a type of nonprofit or a type of, social mission cause thing. So I always like to say that if you really want to shape the world, do something else, give them money, do other things.
Do something personal.
Do something personal that really affects the world.
And there's something really great about that. There's something about, it kind of goes back to the boundaries and limits, right? You allow yourself the space to personally be an advocate for something and do that in a way that really feels good. And then you allow yourself to make money with companies that meet your values, maybe aren't changing the world for the better, but they're not changing the world for the worst. And you give yourself the more space to really focus on that, both personally, because you professionally are in a more calmer space, if that makes sense. But we're not saying it's impossible. It's just, that is a very, unfortunately or fortunately, it's a very saturated.
And there are some firms that are doing a great job of it, like HyperAct.
Yes,
I don't know if you guys know HyperAct. HyperAct is doing a fantastic job of specializing in mission-driven work. But they're very focused, and they're both focused on their business, and they've been doing it for a long time. So they've already had an expertise and a specialization, and they can really prove it.
During lean times, I'm sorry, Emily?
That's it.
During lean times, I have been recommending designers approach organizations that actually don't have design capacity. Like, don't try and get a job at IDEO. Go to an organization that doesn't have design capacity, show them what design capacity could bring, and try and cultivate that there. Any comments around that approach?
Hunter, you want to take this?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? My bad.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay, take it. Yeah.
I have a problem with that a little bit, Alan. So bear with me, I might disagree with you on that. I think as long as you're paid and you're paid well.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not pro bono. Yeah.
Yeah, so don't do a pro bono.
No,
That's the first thing. I think because the one thing, if you haven't read our article, the first article we didn't print, actually our second article was just launched yesterday, so please check it out. But we really talked about some of the things that we're doing that damaging our industry, and one of those is working for good or mission-driven organizations for free, or for anybody for free.
No.
Because that devalues what we do, right? So if you're doing that, I love the idea of introducing yourself. This is, again, new business, like introducing you to somebody who could possibly use design. They don't necessarily know that, right? So I think that's a great advice, is just don't do it for free.
Yeah, certainly our position is against spec work. People can make their own decision about that, but again, it does devalue the entire profession. And also your labor should be compensated, just as a foundational principle.
Yeah.
Even some of our clients, when they are hiring, one of the things we recommend is doing design, I hate the word test, but design test, for lack of a better word. But we say, they're paid. So these are things that we're also encouraging our clients to do, to make sure that they're also following those guidelines, whether it's with clients or with potential hires.
Yeah.
Other questions? You can unmute. That's bashful group.
Restate my question. So what are some of the key elements of a sustainable organization from a business context? And does size affect this, or are there ways you can spot this when you're looking for places to work?
Hunter, you want to take that one?
No, can you take it?
Okay, can you say that again? Sorry, we were looking at the chat for a second. I'm sorry.
Yep. So what are some of the key elements of a sustainable design organization from a business context? And does size affect this, or, is there ways to spot this when you're looking for places to work?
Great question. I think there's a few things. One is having 3 months of overhead in your bank account. So whatever it costs to run your business, and your salary and your whatever, your rent, if you have rent, nowadays that doesn't exist anymore. But if you have certain expenses like subscriptions, you have to at least have 3 months, if not more. It's 3 to 6 months. Any more than 6 months is too much. So there is a metric there, but it's usually 3 months of income in your bank account, because you need a cushion. The second thing is forecasting your income. So constantly looking at what is next, and do I have enough income coming in to pay for at least half my overhead for the next 6 months, right? The other thing is looking for client retainers are a great way to stay sustainable. I don't recommend having behemoth or what we call gorilla clients, but having 1 or 2 retainers that are, give you frequent money every month, the same amount that you can rely on. The challenge with retainers, and I'll be honest about that, is that retainers can be a little bit tactical and executional, and not very strategic and high level. So you don't want to have too many of those projects, because your portfolio will get damaged that way. But having 1 or 2 of those, ideally, if you can have a strategic client, that's even better, who gives you a retainer. But most retainers are more tactical. And sometimes you need those just to pay the bills. But so it's just a balance of those. And a lot of times retainers are not clients coming to us and saying, I want you to be on retainer. It's much more us saying, hey, you have a lot of work. You don't have in-house team. We could do this for you, and here's what we propose. So it's being advisory to our clients and upselling the idea of retainers.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, you're saying how do you spot that with people you're potentially going to be employed by? It's tricky, right? You can't go out and talk to them tell me your numbers. But I think there's things you can do. I think one of the things is asking to talk to someone you'd be working closely with, who's not a leadership position, like a project manager or another creative, and someone that could sort of get some insight into how much, what's the word, when there's a lot of flux in terms of staffing, how much in and out is there? I think you could also ask smart questions what brought you, what is the need for hiring this person? Are you guys going through a big growth period? And you could see did they just get one big client, they're freaking out and they need to hire? Are they thinking about it a little bit more organically and sustainably? So I think asking why are you hiring for the position? What's, what are the changes going on in your business that prompted this need? And so you could kind of look for some key hints in that, but it's, it's tricky. And I think just looking at their team, seeing if you could talk to a team member, asking some smart questions. And I think that'll also make you look good if you're like, oh, what's, what are the, the goals for your firm in this next year in terms of growth? Like, how do you envision my role, supporting that, et cetera?
That's great advice. Just looking at the clock, time for just one last question. Knowing then what you know now for emerging designers or designers in design grad school and going to be emerging designers, one piece of advice from each of you, knowing then what you know now.
Okay. I think the first thing is to have experience under your belt. I think that too many people start their own firm right out of school and don't know anything about running a business, and that's kind of dangerous. And I think just immersing yourself into having experience, a little bit of on the ground experience, is helpful. I guess the other thing I would say is your first job, this is going to be opposite of what we recommend our clients do, is to get firms that do more general design, because you want to be exposed. A lot of them, like when I used to be a teacher, I remember the student who's like, I want to be a digital designer and only look for digital design work. And I'm like, I think that's dangerous, because what happens if you don't like it? And you should look for a firm where you can do digital and branding and packaging, like a bunch of things, so you can see what you like. He didn't follow my advice. Within a year, he was so burned out because he just did digital and he hated it.
Yeah.
And then he had trouble moving on to another field because his whole portfolio was now all digital.
Well,
So I
speaks well
think
to
to
our
me,
multidisciplinary instruction here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Hunter?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was 2 pieces of advice.
No, that was a good one. Yeah. I think the experiencing is so key. Like I joined my mom's business, and obviously there's benefits of joining existing business, but I got on the ground experience first to make sure I knew what I like to do, and also to make sure I wanted to stick with this path. So just like reemphasizing the importance of that. I think also pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. I think it was similar. It's kind of related to the idea of trying different things, but I think it's super important. Like try to do a role that's maybe different from what you expected. I mean, not super, super different, but like maybe not a role, but maybe like within a team, like ask for one challenging project a quarter that kind of pushes you into a different, push you to learn, because you never know. You might be surprised by what might stick with you. Maybe you're like, I really want to be, I'm doing the design for this brand, but I would really love to be involved in the strategy, even if I could just join the calls. So you could and then maybe you really love it and something that you could more involved in. So push yourself out of your comfort zone and try different things, just because you want to get your feet dirty and really see, what's out there and what your opportunities are and what you really love. Like, maybe you meet with the partners of the firm you're working for when you have your one-on-ones with them, and you ask them, like, how has running the business gone? And you talk to them about things like that. Like, I think just ask good questions and push yourself into different areas that maybe you thought maybe wouldn't work for you, and see what works. You never know.
I have one more thing of not doing. Don't be the only designer in-house. A lot of my ex-students did that. They, got a job to be the design director, and they were the only person in the corporation. They had no support, no inspiration, nobody to collaborate with. So I think that's, for the first job, not a good idea as well.
Great advice, and so much great advice. Could we ask people to turn on their cameras for a minute? We're going to take a group photo here.
Oh, it's nice seeing
Just for a
everybody's face
minute.
now.
Oh, love
A
it.
couple more, if you could turn on your camera, that would be great, please. Thanks.
Can you get all the people? All of that? Because it's
Well, we're going to do
But yeah.
two group photos of page 1
Yeah.
and page 2. So I think the staff is screenshotting. So I'm taking pictures with my phone. Emily and Hunter, thank you so much for being here. Maybe everyone can unmute and give a little clap. So we really appreciate your time and energy and candor here today.